By the end of this video, you're gonna know who had the closest thing to the perfect bodybuilding physique and at what show. Of course, in my opinion, that is. Hello Superset Maniacs and welcome back to my channel. We've been talking on this channel about the perfect physique for a while now, but let's take a step away from all the hybrids and all the Photoshop and focus on the real thing, on the actual bodybuilders that almost reached perfection at a certain point. First of all, we need to establish some ground rules, as bodybuilding is as subjective as you can get. What does perfect mean? Well, it could mean a lot of things, but essentially having as few weak points as possible, as many strong points as possible, good structure, muscle insertions, muscle fullness, thin skin, basically a combination of all these things. And one more thing before we begin. A near perfect physique doesn't have to be an invincible version of a bodybuilder. For instance, take the 2009 Mr. Olympia. I believe Dexter had fewer flaws and was closer to what a perfect physique would look like than the actual winner of that show, Jay Cutler. Of course, Jay won the show fair and square, but he did so being more conditioned, bigger and better than anyone else that day. And also keep in mind that Dexter took third at that show, with many believing he should have placed second, so he was doing better. So the perfect physique doesn't have to be beautiful physiques that were not in the conversation of winning shows either. I will be focusing on the modern era of bodybuilding, starting with the 90s. I will also not include other divisions than the men's open in this video. Number 10. Dorian Yates, Mr. Olympia 1993. Okay, probably all of you are confused right now. Some die-hard Dorianites being upset he's so low, but probably most of you wondering why Dorian would make a list like this one, knowing he had some glaring weaknesses in his physique. Hear me out. Dorian had arguably the best back ever. In 1993 he had some of the best legs in the business, he had the best conditioning, a small waist for a man's monster, more than decent abs and great horseshoe triceps. On top of all, he possessed two very rare qualities in bodybuilding, great calves and great forearms. On the other side, he had pretty weak biceps, shoulders and an average chest, but balancing out the strong points and the weak points, I couldn't leave the shadow out of this list. Number 9. Cedric McMilan Arnold Classic 2016. Yes, I believe he looked better in 2016 than the following year when he actually won the show. At the 2016 Arnold Classic, Cedric allegedly won the compulsory round against Greene, and he only lost overall because Kai was a better poser. That's what I believe the judges have said, and not too many people could say they beat Kai in his prime. Cedric stands at 6 feet 1 inch tall. He's the tallest guy on this list. He's got some of the prettiest lines as well, being a mass monster at the same time. Small waist, great taper, good arms, decent back. Not any noticeable weaknesses really. His downside was his inconsistency with conditioning, but he definitely earns his spot on this list. Number 8. Greene, Mr. Olympia 2012. Yes, Kai had his weaknesses, especially compared to his rival Heath, like the forearms or the delts, but he was a very complete bodybuilder. He had incredible arms, especially the biceps, one of the best backs in bodybuilding history, and one of the best lower bodies in history, having world-class quads, hams, calves and glutes. He also had 6-pack abs in spite of his blockier physique, and in 2012 his conditioning was on point. Number 7. Dexter Jackson, Mr. Olympia 2009. Aside from the forearms and the calves, you cannot really find a weak point in this physique, and what makes it even more special is the combination of mass and aesthetics he presented at that event, a combination not too many bodybuilders can achieve. Dexter was also a pretty narrow bodybuilder, but he definitely earned his spot in this list. In number 6 we have the 2007 uncrowned Mr. Olympia Victor Martinez. I like to say that his physique in 2007 resembles a Phil Heath with wide clavicles, almost. The level of mass, proportions and conditioning he had at that show is unreal. You really cannot find a single weak point on his physique at that show. Huge round arms, good back development, good lower body, wide shoulders and a relatively small waist makes this physique one of the greatest of all time in my opinion. Number 5 is Kevin Levrone at the 1997 Finland Grand Prix. 1999 British Grand Prix could be another option for Kevin, but in 1997 his midsection was smaller and his legs were better in my opinion, especially at this show, where I believe it was where he actually peaked in his career. Kevin had some of the best arms and shoulders ever, a great chest, a great taper, a pretty good back and good lower body. This Kevin Levrone was something else. In number 4 we have Shawn Ray at the 1999 Mr. Olympia. He only placed 6th at this show, but just like in Kevin's case, bald-head Shawn Ray is the best Shawn Ray. Aside from his overall size, because he was a pretty short bodybuilder standing tall at around 5 feet 5 inches, he didn't really have any weak points. He had a complete back, perfect six-pack abs, great arms, good lower body. He didn't have anything too spectacular, but he was damn near perfection at this show. We couldn't leave out the king Ronnie Coleman, who comes in third with his 1999 Mr. Olympia physique. I would have chosen 98 if it wasn't for that nasty gyno he had that year, as I believe he was a bit more polished. But 1999 was similar without the gyno. Aside from the weird looking abs, Ronnie didn't really have any other weak points, aside from the lateral head of the triceps maybe. But not that he didn't have weaknesses qualifies him the most for our list, but the multitude of strong points he had, like one of the best backs ever, some of the best guns ever, some of the best delts, chest, quads, hams ever, the freakiest glutes ever, the paper thin skin and the overall size put him this high on this list. And in 1999, he looked pretty aesthetic as well, especially compared to his later years, when he took the size game to new levels. Coming in number 2 we have the gift Phil Heath at the 2011 Mr. Olympia. The 2010 Arnold or the 2013 Olympia are good options as well. What can we say about Phil? Greatest muscle bellies ever, crazy insertions, not a single weak point from a muscle point of view, aside from not having perfect abs, but in 2011 they were decent. Not only that he did not have weak points, all of his muscles were strong points actually. Arms, shoulders, back, legs, everything. Even calves and forearms and even the chest. His only real flaw in his physique was his narrow clavicle bone, which is not about the muscles but the bone structure actually. But who can beat Prime Phil as being closer to bodybuilding perfection? Well, some of you might have guessed it already. His name is Flex Wheeler and the show is the 1993 Mr. Olympia. Yes, we opened this list with 93 Dorian and we ended with 93 Flex. Flex Wheeler took second to Dorian Yates at this show. Dorian was bigger and better, but Flex looked like a perfect bodybuilder at that show, or at least as perfect as you can get, because he had his weaknesses, like shoulder to shoulder narrowness for example. Aside from his world-class arms, great back, great lower body and crazy conditioning, he had great abs, a small midsection, he had crazy muscle bellies and small joints, a lethal combination. In my opinion, 1993 Flex Wheeler, his Arnold Classic version included as well, is the nearest to perfection physique we had ever witnessed in the history of our beautiful sport. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss my future uploads. And as always, thank you guys and see you next time.